Hello everyone, and good afternoon to those of you in Europe, like most of us on the screen that you can see. Good morning if you're in North America and LATAM, or if you've joined from anywhere else in the world. Thank you for being here in hospitable times. I'm sorry we can't always host these at a good time for those of you in Asia Pacific. My name's Mike. I'm going to be your host and I'll be facilitating our discussion today. We've got some real experts here. We are going to be talking about AI and its impact on the research and insights world, particularly in-house teams and the way that work gets done in large organizations. There are obviously lots of things going on in the world of AI. Generative AI has really exploded recently, lots of innovations, far more than we can possibly cover here. There are some other resources on the Insight Platform site that I will share with you after this. And we'll be restricting this to the scope of really talking about AI and its impact on research and insights. If you want to say hi, do feel free to post a message in this chat panel on the right-hand side. If you want to tell us where you're joining from, that's always interesting. If you have questions, you'll see a little Q&A tab, and we're going to break for questions at different points in this session. So if you can put them into the Q&A tab, it makes it easier for me to find them and for our experts to answer them. So great. Hi, Rob from Chicago, Sao Paulo already. One quick thing at the end, if you hear things that you'd like to talk more about to the Market Logic team, there will be a couple of people available in what's set up as a virtual table afterwards. I'll explain a bit more at the end, but we'll come back to that. Now, one very quick thing before we start with introducing your experts. I am going to ask you all now, before you've seen anything, is to ask you what you think of AI. So I think let's put this on the stage. You should have a little link to answer this poll. It's really about how you feel about the potential impact of AI on research and insights teams. Now, I can never quite tell how this works for those of you in the audience. I don't think you can see the results until we close the poll, but let's just give it a moment until we've done that and see how many of you are going to answer. We've got just under 100 people in the session. It looks like about 60 of you have voted so far. Let's give it another few seconds, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised that an audience that's come to hear about the impact of AI is overwhelmingly positive. So let's have a look at this. Hopefully you can see this poll now. I've closed it. Apologies if you were trying to vote. But our audience today seems to be rather positive about this subject. So looks like about 90% positive or very positive. So great. We'll have a constructive discussion. So good to get that kicked off. Now, I'm going to stop talking so much and I'm going to hand over to our experts because they're far more qualified than I am. And Emma, let me start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your role, and where you work?
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emma Howard. I'm part of EH Consulting, but I also work at Tesco's PLC and have been the project manager to launch and deploy our knowledge management system to the business over the last coming up to 7 years now.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Great to have you. Tom, tell us a little bit about your role and where you work.
Hi, Mike, and everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm Tom Mostert. I head up knowledge management as a center of excellence within marketing and insights and analytics as a function within Philips, which is part of the broader marketing organization based in Philips headquarters here in Amsterdam. I've been with Philips from 2017. I first started out at the hospital patient monitoring business in Stuttgart, and I'm originally from South Africa, if you're wondering about the accent, but I moved to Europe about 10 years ago, and I've been in the insights industry since straight out of university 25 years ago when I started working for Research International, and we were still punching cards to capture data back those days.
Tom, I didn't realise we may have been former colleagues at some time in the dim and distant past. I was also with Research International about 15 years ago. There we go. Olaf, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and hello from Berlin. Good day, good morning. My name is Olaf Lenzmann. I'm a co-founder of Market Logic and responsible for product and innovation here. We at Market Logic, we're a software vendor providing insights platforms to our clients to help them, organize their knowledge and insights, develop new insights, disseminate them, and we have an AI product in the market since earlier this year, and therefore are in the midst of those discussions with our customers.
Thanks. And Market Logic is sponsoring this event, so thank you very much for taking part in that. So let's kick off and just talk about your experience with AI and research and insights, and let's go around the table again. Emma, can you just talk to us a bit about the types of AI that you've explored in your team with a research insights application?
So we're currently talking to Market Logic about demoing the Deep Sights tool, which positive feedback from some very challenging people within the business, but also been speaking to third-party suppliers about integrating their sources into the tool at the same time. And it's been incredibly positive from lots of people, but then it has surprised me the hesitancy that we've had from other people that I would expect them to be an awful lot more enthusiastic. So that's quite surprising. I think there is an awful lot of hesitancy as far as security is concerned. We had an email sent out by our Chief Customer Officer a couple of weeks ago saying, please do not use AI when you're talking about sensitive information, because we've seen that Samsung have had a massive leak where they've been putting sensitive information into ChatGPT and it's been transferred to give access to lots of other people. It's compromised their business. But also we've had quite a few conferences at the beginning of this year where we've had the opportunity to look at different resources to analyze data for us, which I think will be incredibly powerful, where we're all time is our biggest luxury, to be quite honest. Anything that will save us time, I think it's incredibly exciting. I've also used a globality tool for sending out RFPs, and that was absolutely amazing. Whereas 3 years ago, I spent nearly 3 months briefing different agencies on our requirements. I filled in one form, sent it out, and the system will actually analyze the data for us and give me the answers. So time saving is incredibly powerful. I do think that people are getting very scared about their jobs.
Right. Okay. So two big themes there. I think we'll probably come back to. So efficiency and time saving, and kind of fear of will we still be employed. Tom, tell us a bit about what you've been exploring from an AI perspective.
Sure. Well, here at Philips, we actually have a broad spectrum of business functions and operational areas and applications where we are currently applying AI, not only in data analytics, but also in performance enhancements. And when we're talking about AI, AI is such a broad term. So we're really talking about mainly machine learning, specifically supervised learning for computer vision, and clinical data analytics and visualization applications. These are the areas where we have made great advancements and we actually have a lot of patents. There are other areas where we use technologies like natural language processing. There are so many applications where this can be useful, both in our service offerings as well as in customer feedback and marketing operations. Within marketing specifically, we use machine learning and artificial intelligence in various different ways. One, which is, I think, the topic of discussion today, is in knowledge management, where we use intelligent search and AI-driven user experience personalization on our Eureka knowledge platform. That's also the platform where we have been toying around a little bit with deep learning and large language models as possible additional layers. But I think in some of the other questions, we're going to look at some of the many applications where we use AI.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So it sounds like it's quite broadly embedded across the Philips business, across other departments, not just within science and marketing. And the insights applications, I think, we'll come back to, like you say, but the things like sort of analysing the content of customer feedback and language and that type of thing. Olaf, what have you seen other organisations looking into, in terms of AI?
Yeah, well, I think in general, and also as Tom said, there's a whole crop of AI around analytics, pattern matching, finding new patterns in data, more about qualitative data. That has been around for a while, that has been matured, that's very much accepted and widespread. Now, when we're talking specifically about generative AI and large language models, that really is a new paradigm, because also the systems show new kinds of behavior, don't even feel like software anymore, really. And that is, at the same time, has caused a lot of excitement and drawn a lot of attention that we see across the board in the market and with many, many customers. And everybody's kind of intrigued and eager to get going and try to understand it. And at the same time, there's a lot of, reservation and maybe being cautious about it, whether this can really be trusted, what could go wrong. There's a whole host of risks, both from the perspective of the application and the insights team itself, as well as, of course, from corporate perspectives, and I'm sure we'll touch on that.
Yeah.
But I would say there's a lot of momentum that we see, and a lot of desire and appetite to get going with it in a controlled, low risk, first step-by-step way, to get confidence, to see how it behaves, to get internal buy-in, validate it, get feedback, and then slowly advance forward. Nobody wants to have an experience like maybe some companies in the past, like Microsoft launching chatbots that then immediately generate a huge backlash in terms of difficult behavior. So we see many people trying to take very intentional but controlled steps to get their feet wet and start to wrap their heads around it.
Okay, great. I think the anxieties are, very well publicized, aren't they? Or the reasons to be anxious, I think, get a lot of attention, particularly, like I think you mentioned the Tay chatbot from about 5 years ago with Microsoft, and the Sydney incarnation recently. It makes for great headlines. But Emma, you said you'd seen some pushback from some people, but what about the flip side? What's where are people getting excited about how AI can be applied in research and insights? You talked about efficiency. Are there other areas as well?
Yeah, I think it's a case of getting closer to insight for our stakeholders as quickly as possible as well. It's highlighting the fact that we can give them stuff that they need, or insights and data that they need, as quickly as possible. And that will, again, is the time element, but it's also being able to influence the business with the right insights and data as well. So I think it's going to be incredibly positive, but as Olaf says, I think people are hesitant, and we've got to do it in a controlled way and prove its validity before we have to do it very slowly to reassure people. But I think that because it's been spoken about so much, it seems like CEOs and execs are really breathing down people's necks at the moment to say, what are we doing? But like Philip said, there are so many opportunities. It's how do you do it considered to affect the entire business? So where you've got customer feedback, analysing the customer feedback, but then you've got sales data and things like that you will be able to get answers on very, very quickly, which is going to be so impactful, because the businesses that I've worked with over the last few years, they want everything yesterday, and this is going to do it.
Yeah. Interesting. But you said there's a speed thing there. There's a kind of access to data for stakeholders. Sounds like there's a big thing about integrating different types of data. Maybe, I don't
there is massive. Yes,
right.
Definitely. You can't just rely on your own data source. And I'm sure majority of companies are the same. I think you're very naive if you're just looking at your own data. You need to look what's going on in the wider world. Yeah. And I think it will be incredibly powerful if you're able to integrate third parties that you trust, insight and data. So trusted partners, I think, is the best way to approach it, to make sure, it's data and insights that we would use around the business anyway. but it's just having it consolidated into one place and enabling everyone to access that information. And I think as well, at the moment with our knowledge management systems, you just put in a search term and you're grateful for anything that comes back. But if you're going to ask it a question, I think it will get people's brains going, because once you've asked it a question and you see the validity of getting the right answers, they'll go back more and more. So I think it will be really impactful on widening our audience as far as insight and data is concerned, because there are only a few insight partners and they can only answer a certain amount of questions a day, whereas DeepSights or any other AI tool will be able to answer multiple questions in an afternoon very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Great points. And I like that, the conversational thing, being able to kind of ask a question, ask a follow-up question, I think changes the way people interact, doesn't it? Tom, are you seeing similar sort of things? I mean, are these opportunities that resonate for you with Philips?
Yes, definitely. I think your question was, what do people get excited about, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to venture too far out on a limb and say that I speak for everybody working on AI projects at Philips, because there's a wide range of opinions going on, and a lot of things will pop up when you ask them about what they get excited about. But you'll probably hear a lot that the word growth comes up. And I think that is one of the things that people are really looking for as the opportunity area here with AI. And for me, artificial intelligence has now reached that phase in the innovation life cycle, or the hype cycle, where adoption is really starting to accelerate. And for us, I think that is a really good thing, because as more people adopt the technology and they trust the technology in their everyday lives, the more open they will be to also use our solutions. And that means our hard work in the field of AI will start to pay off. So it's not just how we use AI to generate insights, how we use AI to inform and influence the decisions of decision makers and strategists in the company. It's a push and a pull. So we are pushing the insights from the inside, but the AI is also opening doors on the customer side for us. And when we start integrating these two things, and we connect the data coming from the outside and that we are generating on the inside, it's going to start all sorts of opening doors that will generate growth. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people will get quite excited about.
Yeah, interesting. And how do you think it helps the insights and research organization, or do you think it helps insights to power growth better? Is that an opportunity that your team is excited about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely what we're going to see is that there is going to be a growing expectation that AI will facilitate performance. And this is the area where marketing, I think, will be first impacted, but all sorts of other areas are going to be impacted as well. So yeah, that's definitely the first place where we will need to demonstrate the return on the AI investment.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to give our audience a 5-minute heads up. We'll have space for some of your questions. So if you have questions, please put them into that Q&A tab, and we'll make sure that we cover them, particularly about the opportunities for AI and the upside and the way in which teams can adopt them. So do post your questions for our team of experts. Olaf, what are you seeing from the other customers you're talking to, opportunities for AI in the research and insight space?
Yeah, well, from our perspective, there's really, and I think both Emma and Tom already mentioned that there's multiple sides of the whole topic. One side, of course, is helping the insights teams in their function as more like subject matter experts, creating insights, acquiring new data, running research, analyzing data, synthesizing. So, of course, there's a lot of opportunity here, both for more efficiency, for supporting the individuals with repetitive tasks, but also to inject best practices, to automatically inject learnings from the past. So there's quite a bit of quality aspect also, I think, where the AI can help to drive quality. And in my mind, this is more about providing the experts with something like co-pilots, helping them in their very specific tasks, getting more efficient, pushing them a little bit, or helping them, supporting them to get a bit better quality out, and also enabling them to cross-link things which simply wouldn't be possible for us with our natural intelligence.
Yeah.
On the other side, we see also very, very much, and that's a strong pull we also get from our customers, the side of the role of the insights team as a business partner, as a consultant, as communicating the insights and supporting the business, and that this kind of generative AI can now really enable completely new ways of reaching stakeholders, of lowering barriers for them to reach out to work with insights, and really to find ways of being where they are and helping them with the questions in the moments and in the context where they have them, rather than, well, expecting them to consciously come back to the insights teams, either in person or through tools that are somewhere set up, but really to be wherever they are. So ultimately, I think that AI in this area will create huge gains of productivity. But I think if we can get, let's say, 10x productivity, the way to think about it is not now we could do the same with a tenth of the cost, but it's rather with the resources we have, we can do 10 times as many things and generate much more insight and reach much wider. So it will, I think, amplify and scale the impact of massive.
I think as well,
coupled with connections to the business will be really, really transformative over time.
Yeah. Emma, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I also think it's something that IMA is really encouraging us to reuse insight. Once you've written a report and presented it to your stakeholders, you don't just put it into the ether and forget about it. You reuse certain aspects of it. And I think AI will really enable you to do that. It will really help the insight farming that we're encouraged to do at the moment, which will enable us to save money, save time, and give us better insight as well.
Emma, this is the Insight Management Academy, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
For those of you not in the UK, this is an organisation of client-side insight practitioners kind of building best practice guidelines for research and insights teams. So the website actually has some free resources if you're interested. Yes. Tom, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, it's I absolutely agree with what Emma was saying, is that in our knowledge management practice, one of our key objectives is also recite and the recycling of existing insights. And also, this is the most obvious area where large language models can have a huge impact. The generative language-based AIs, they're already helping us a great deal to augment and speed up the insights discovery pathway from new insights, but it is also making it possible to repackage insights that we already have from different markets or from different areas, and also to discover insights that are already existing so that we have less duplication as well in our research processes, so that we can fill white spaces in our body of knowledge far quicker without the need for additional research. And I know Olaf is not going to be too happy if I say this, but from a research buyer perspective, there is already a lot of pressure to reduce budgets spent on research and to rather spend that on engaging with customers. And this is where the AI and the generative models can help a lot, because it can close the gap between, the analyst thinking about the insights and the salesperson sitting in front of a customer, and we can generate an answer to a customer question while we're sitting in front of a customer, potentially in the future. We're not doing that right now, but this is the potential of the generative models, and this is why I would congratulate companies like Market Logic that is at the forefront of this, for being the first to take the risk and bring this technology to customers so that we can enable and we can see what the potential is.
Good point. I mean, if I were to be a little bit more blunt than I think either of you are able to be, I think there's a lot of research that gets done that doesn't need to get done, isn't it? You know, the stuff that we kind of know already, we're spending money relearning the same things, and you know, I guess applications like this can really help us. I think what I heard was, you know, was three really big territories of opportunity here. One is around efficiency of process. You know, one is around communicating or embedding insights with other teams, giving them access, you know, more efficiently. And the third is this whole idea of mining what you already know, knowing what you know, and you know, that feels like an enormous value territory. So great way just to kind of wrap up that first section, because we've got a lot of questions coming in. So thank you everyone for contributing here. I'm going to show some of these on stage. They're not all necessarily ones that we're going to want to tackle here, but let's start with Stephen. I'm going to put this on stage because it comes up quite a lot about ChatGPT and the training data and the fact that it's only you know, a couple of years old. And I think perhaps this is one for you, Olaf, just to talk through some of the challenges around this and how these might be addressed.
Yes, for sure. So that is a very, very good and important question. If we look at large language models like the technology underpinning ChatGPT, that has been trained on a certain set of data. And finally, the trained model is a static result of this exercise. So we can now ask questions, acquire it, and it's able to respond, but only can draw on information which it has been trained on, which has, in this case, a cutoff date in 2021. So from that perspective, obviously, this model per se is not sufficiently qualified to answer questions that we may have. And therefore, what we, for example, do is we do use certain aspects of the large language model to understand what a user inquires, to generate the answer, but we don't rely on its factual knowledge of the world that it has been trained on. We rather use the proprietary knowledge and insights that our customers have, and use that explicitly as the basis on which we then employ this kind of model to generate answers to questions. And of course, there's a host of other challenges around it when it comes to hallucinations, as it's called. So when models make up answers, which they specifically tend to do if they don't know the answer, but they're forced to give one, then they will create a very compelling one, but that might be completely made up. And again, there's certain techniques and certain additional training layers that, for example, we have employed there in our solution to ensure that these kinds of situations are mitigated.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Olaf. So hopefully that helps. I think it's the explosion of tools and the amount of, I guess, headspace that ChatGPT occupies. It's quite hard to untangle these things, but there are several things going on. You know, one is the model and its capabilities, and one is the data that's in there. And you know, you can benefit from the model without necessarily relying on that same training data. Good. Let's pick another question here. Now, this will be a good one. I'd love to get your feedback on this one. So, Tom, Emma, maybe this is unfair to start with you guys, and perhaps Olaf, perhaps you can give them some breathing space. What's the simplest way of explaining to non-technical people the difference between AI and non-AI algorithms? So this is the danger that we're in right now, is that AI seems to be applied to everything, and it's in danger of losing its inherent meaning because it's being put across so much stuff. Olaf, do you have any guidance on that one just before?
Yeah, well, that's a nice challenge. First of all, because AI is, of course, a very malleable term, and everybody will abuse it for their specific purpose. If I look at it, maybe one lens to look at it is, of course, non-AI algorithms essentially usually are rules and heuristics coded by humans based on some experience and trial and error. Machine learning essentially substitutes this with an automatic process that adapts an algorithm, if you will, automatically to training data, to match training data in the best possible way, which then can be used to apply it to new unseen data to, for example, classify pictures into cats or dogs, etc. And when it comes to large language models, specifically like ChatGPT, I think the way they operate is a way which I, in my mental model, rather liken to a human than to a piece of software, because the way you interact with it, the way it responds to you is, first of all, highly non-technical. So anybody is here in the audience who've never interacted with ChatGPT because they feel this sounds also technical, don't be discouraged. It's absolutely zero technical. It's like talking to another person, if you will. And therefore, I find this is a good mental model to say we have essentially been able, we as humanity have been able to train a piece of software to behave in a certain range and domain like a human that we can talk to, with a lot of limitations, but it can already do fascinating things.
Great. Tom, Emma, put you on the spot. Do you have any tricks for explaining AI in more simple terms to other stakeholders in your organization?
I can give this a shot. Yes, so when it comes to like a non-AI algorithm, maybe you can think about designing a really complex formula in Excel, and you're using a single database to calculate something. And I've done this plenty of times, doing a value calculator, for instance, and you take in many different variables into account, and you give weightings to different variables, but it's still one database, and it's one set of formulas that you can actually express as an algorithm. Whereas in machine learning, and there is a gray area, of course, because there are really simple models for machine learning as well, and then there are really complex models for machine learning. But you're more likely to be using a neural network with different databases. And when the data goes into the neural network, the machine learning algorithm uses different perspectives, and it learns from the data. It learns from different iterations of the data. It creates new data, and then it comes up with an answer. And there is a little bit of a black box in the middle of it. But if you combine big data, really large volumes of data, possibly even data lakes, you combine different data sets, you link them together in different ways, and you teach the model, the algorithm, to create new and previously unexplored, and there could be thousands and thousands of different correlations between the data. Then you have machine learning, you have AI, which is then rather distinguishable from a non-AI algorithm.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. So some good tips there for trying to explain that to non-technical people. Tom, there's a good question here, which is addressed directly to you. So I don't want to exclude you, Emma, because you may have some good inputs on this as well. But the question is, you talked about growth, and do you have any examples where AI has helped either answer a business question or positively impacted on growth? Is there anything? Obviously, you can't share anything commercially confidential, but if you have some examples of the types of applications that you've seen of this, then would be great to hear.
Okay, well, I'll give it a try. I think some of the big opportunity areas for Philips, and I will talk about these as use cases for us, would have been in streamlining and automating data and analytics workflows. Also helping with compliance, for instance, because we are in a highly regulated healthcare industry. We need to do things like removing personally identifiable information from large unstructured data sets, and we've used AI to achieve this at scale and at speed. AI can also help to identify biases in data sets, and of course, when we are working with, for instance, medical imaging data, the learning data, also, we need tens of thousands of examples for the machine learning model to learn from the data sets. Often we don't have that amount of data, and then we need to use synthetic data, and there could be biases in those data sets, and we need to identify biases there. One example is overfitting bias, and we use AI to reduce that. So these are just some of the examples where we have been able to implement AI and learnings from AI to improve our services and our offerings to customers and ensure that we have a competitive advantage. And that, of course, drives growth.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And Emma, anything to add or to build on that Tom said?
I would have to say I agree an awful lot with what Tom's got to say. There's certain things that I'm not able to speak about, obviously, for sensitivity reasons, but just, I know I keep saying it, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but saving time on lots of areas of the business as far as analytics is concerned, and our financial teams can't talk about what's going on in retail because I don't know who might hear it, and I like my job, but
Absolutely. Okay.
I do think that it will save us an awful lot of time, and the
Yeah.
globality tool, things like that, just being able to do one job and it going out to 20, 30 different people, I think is incredibly powerful. Great.
Okay, listen, we're not going to be able to get to all of these questions. We'll have them after, and we'll make sure that we try and follow up either from, from those of us on the call or from experts in the Market Logic team. There's one very good one here, which is teeing us up nicely for our next segment. So what are the key watch outs from your perspective? Now, hold that thought, because we're going to talk about risks and challenges next. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you another question. So if you wouldn't mind just responding to the poll I've just published, which I will show on stage, just some idea, and we haven't talked about all these opportunities. These are things where AI, from a research and insights perspective, is starting to have some impact in different areas. So which of these areas do you think have the greatest potential for positive impact on the research and insights workflow? So writing briefs, designing questionnaires, analyzing qual or quant data, creating reports, or mining your existing knowledge. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so. Lots of votes coming in, so thank you for participating. Okay, let me close. I'm going to, apologies if you're avidly trying to vote, but I'm going to close this poll in a couple of seconds just so that we can move on, because we've got lots of ground still to cover. So this is looking great. Thank you very much for your feedback. So here we go. Looks to me like analyzing qualitative data is a big use case for those of you here, followed by searching existing knowledge. So what we talked about with Emma and Tom about mining, what we already know. Certainly the analysis doesn't look like too many people want to cheat on the writing and drafting of research briefs yet at this stage, but I'm sure that will come. Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. Now, we talked about limitations and risks and watch out. So let's come back to that. And the kind of concerns that are out there. Emma, you opened up by talking about some of the pushback you'd had, some of the skepticism. Can you just explain what concerns have been aired in the business? Obviously, the confidentiality thing with Samsung. Any others?
I think I've just come from a meeting before this with the senior leadership from the Insight team, and their main concern is that our information is going to be stored and shared with other people. And there have been lots of experiences of that, which I've already verbalized. Like I said earlier, I think we just have to do tests in controlled areas to prove the validity and the secureness. And I think it's something that anyone that was developing a tool really has to look at the security and make sure that the information is not being shared outside of the particular tool that we're using.
Yeah.
And I think it's like anything. I mean, when I first launched the knowledge management system to the UK core business, I had to go to the senior leadership team, the board, and ask permission because they were so scared about sharing insights across the business. So I think it's a case of just taking small teams, working with those, proving validity, and then launching it to the wider groups. And then you've also got the concerns about people's jobs. People are concerned, what's going to happen if we allow this into our business now? Are we going to be employed in 5 years' time? Because ChatGPT has moved on. I was only aware of it in November, and we're on version 4 now. What are we going to have next year? With what I've seen and used in personal life and my working life is incredible. I can visualize briefs being filled in and completed in 6 months' time. And that is something that is a real bugbear. As somebody that's always asking for a brief, stakeholders across the business, do I really need to? Can't I just tell you what I want? But the thing is that when you do fill in a brief, you get so much more consideration, and the person that's filling in the brief learns more about what they want to understand, and the person that's reading the brief learns more what they want to understand. So I think that is going to be very, very powerful, but I think it's going to fall into our personal lives as well as our business lives as well.
Yeah. Okay, so some big concerns, I think, there, around security of information, around, displacement of roles, particularly in the, in these types of functions. Tom, are they the kind of concerns that you shared? I mean, you talked about a word in a specific context about bias. Is that another thing that we should be thinking about?
Bias, yes. And of course, the issues that Emma was talking about. In fact, I think there are many legitimate red flags when we think about AI related, not only to your intellectual property, but also about personal data protection, about privacy, the potential abuse of the technology by bad actors. You can go down a rabbit hole with that. So I really think that we need to have a complete separate webinar just to cover the risks and the concerns and the possible disruption and the unintended consequences of AI. This is a minefield. Yeah. But in addition to that, I think right now, much of the concerns also that I've heard amongst my peers are related to the accuracy and reliability of the output, especially from generative AI technology. And we've seen that some content generated by GPT models can be factually incorrect, and Olaf touched on that earlier on, and therefore the output still needs to be validated. So when we're talking about jobs disappearing, I don't think that that's going to happen until many of these issues have been sorted out. We need to validate. We cannot just trust blindly what comes out of these models. A AI model like ChatGPT is not designed to say, I don't know. So it is going to fabricate something for the sake of giving you an answer. It's more of a creative model than it is a fact model. But we do have other AI that can be used for fact checking. We've got co-pilots that can be used for finding references for information and making sure that the information that we are using is factual, current, accurate, reliable, etc. So I think we're going to have to use a suite of different AI products to get to the answers that we want. We cannot just use one single one.
That's a great build, I think, there, because a lot of people, I think, were tempted to see this through the lens of a kind of singular ChatGPT generative AI tool. But actually, what we're talking about is things that are optimized for very specific use cases. So one may be for creativity, one may be for fact checking, another may be for analytics or whatever else. Olaf, what else are you seeing in the conversations you're having sort of broadly around people's concerns, anxieties about AI for insights?
Yeah, let me just make a note to come back to your fact checking. I think one big general topic we see, and Emma mentioned that, is a lot of concern around, I would say, more corporate level aspects of compliance, IP protection, confidentiality, privacy, etc. For sure, we see a lot of, we know some large companies have issued wholesale bans of these technologies. We see many customers setting up specific task forces centrally, internally, to deal with that, to explicitly appraise and assess and whitelist any use of AI in the company. And as Tom said, there's a lot of questions that need to be thought through, and some of them will need technical answers, some of them will need maybe contractual or legal answers, or a mix of those. But ultimately, I believe this is, a transient phase that we'll be going through for surely quite a while, but in a way it also reminds me a little bit of the discussions that were there when the rise of cloud computing was just about to begin, like 10, 15 years ago. And first of all, everybody said, oh my God, never, I can put my data and applications into the cloud. So ultimately, I think these things will be overcome. And again, also can confirm that the very specific concerns in insights teams are mostly around the robustness, the trust in the output, the loss of control, like now the system paraphrases, synthesizes answers. It's not exactly our words anymore as we put them into the original report. Maybe then the consumers of the information start cherry picking if they directly access it. But then again, I think there's always the strong argument of the counterfactual. What if they never see the insights in the first place? So there is always a balance that we have to strike. And of course, a very fair concern again also is that wrong answers, misleading information might lead to wrong decisions. And that is for sure true. But also here, I think that is maybe amplified, but that's not new because of AI. We in general need robust mechanisms to make decisions that don't rely on a single point or don't fail because of a single point of error. We also, I think, have all made decisions based on Excel sheets that later turned out to have a formula error somewhere. So there's many ways to go wrong. But maybe then a concluding thought on the fact-checking and the various AIs Tom mentioned. There are already now the first things coming up where the solution that you interact with as an AI is in turn internally composed of many little micro roles, and you have like one incarnation of it playing the fact checker, one incarnation playing the fact finder, another one then ultimately defining what the response is. So I think we will see a lot of further incremental advancements also, even if the current technology level of AI would remain what it is now.
Yeah, great. We are actually rattling through this hour, so if you have other questions, we'll try and break in another couple of minutes to do some more Q&A. I know there are some that we didn't get to answer the first time around, but if you have questions about the concerns, the risks, the challenges that we've been discussing, post them into the Q&A tab now, and we'll try and cover those. And I'll say if we don't get to do any of your questions live, we'll come back to you at the end. Lots of great comments coming in. Christy, thanks. You know your job will be lost to someone who knows how to use AI before it's lost to AI. So great comment there from Christy, thank you. And a lot of comments here about quality and fact checking, and still having to apply critical thinking and to follow up, and double check the outputs of AI tools. So Maria, a comment there about making sure that you're following up with a critical mindset on the answers that you're getting. So some good comments there. So let's see if we can just pick a couple of these questions before we go into our last section here. So now, I don't know if this is straightforward to answer for either of you. Let's have a go at this one, because in general terms, we talked earlier about the importance of bringing together internal and external data, and I think this does actually touch on some of the risk areas, which is do we have confidence in the quality of the data that we're getting? I guess, how do you go about assessing the quality or reliability of external data or insights providers? Do you have a process for screening them, for double checking the data that you're getting? Tom, how do you tackle that within Philips?
We actually have a whole training series and a database on the vendors that we trust. We have a approved supplier database where we have the vetted external vendors where we know and can trust the data, and then we also have a database where we know that it is rather dodgy. And now I think most of the people on this call probably have done a search for data on Google, and they have found that there is a report coming out of India, and it only costs $2,500, and it got projections up to 2030, and it says that the market is going to grow by X% compact annual growth rate. We do not trust that type of data, and unfortunately, some of the AI models that are currently out there have access to that information, and they give, I would say, unreliable information based on that. We really pay for top quality data at Philips, and I think Emma will agree with this. If you do not trust the source, or you do not know the source, if you cannot go to the analyst and ask about how they got to the data, if they cannot explain the methodology, then you should actually not pay for the data, even if it looks really cheap to you, because it's probably generated by ChatGPT, and you can probably generate that data now for yourself and not pay a cent for it.
Tom, you make a great point, and I think this is a risk and a challenge that is implicit in lots of what we've talked about, which is just the sourcing of results that are coming. When it's a generative model that is telling you in a conversational interface, actually, what is the underlying kind of source of some of those outputs. Yeah. Emma, do you have a similar sort of process to appraising external data?
It sounds like almost exactly identical, to be quite honest. Yes, we have a registered suppliers list with very trusted agencies, and we call them our partner agencies. At the end of the day, they are an extension of our team. If we're going to pay money for their data and their insight, we have very verified 110% that it's the best data that we can provide the business. Yep. So I have to say, we've built these relationships up over the last few years. So I wouldn't have approached an agency or a partner agency to feed into any AI tool unless I knew that we've built a very strong relationship and we know that data, and we have regular relationships, and I invite them into the office on a regular basis so that we can have conversations. They see how we work. We have regular update sessions so that we can tell them our priorities so that they can work to those priorities. And we test it. We've got analysts that rigorously go through everything. And like you say, we have to know the methodology. We actually inform the business on how we measure different things across the business. So everyone knows that we're aligned. And if anyone wants to measure or work out anything, that they do it on that same methodology and that same process, so that we give the same outputs to everyone and you're not getting contradictory information from different teams across the business. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. And Tom, it seems you've got a fan in the audience as well. It looks like you've been helping Julie with sorting out her challenges with vendors. So that's good to hear. Right, we are only about 7 minutes away from our close. So I'm going to ask for your final feedback on this poll that I've just published, which is about your perceptions of the concerns and risks around AI. Now, sorry, these answers are a little bit long and you'll need to read them, but it really touches on a lot of what we've talked about here, which is security and confidentiality. Emma, big one there. Compliance and privacy with personal data. You know, where does the model come from and how is it trained? Are the outputs actually accurate? You know, what are the data sources that are being used to generate these outputs? Can we trace them? And then are there biases that are embedded into the model design and the training data as well? So I'll give you a few more seconds just to answer this so we can see where your concerns lie. I think we're starting to see a strong pattern here. Looks like, apologies if I cut people off as you're mid-vote, but we've got about 150 votes right now. So I'm going to close this in the interest of time, but it looks like we are mostly concerned about accuracy and security and confidentiality. There you go. So those are the ones that had the most votes. Obviously, the others are important as well. There's a limitation to the way we can ask questions in here, so we may ask smarter ones in a follow-up survey, but thank you for your feedback. Last little section here, and this is something that, Emma, you talked about explicitly, which is what do we think the impact is going to be on our roles and on the nature of in-house research and insights teams? There's I guess a bear case and a bull case around this. You know, one of which is it helps empower insights teams to be much more efficient and much more collaborative and generative. The other is that other teams go off and do their own work and bypass the insights teams because they've got access to all of this stuff. Where do you sit on that, Emma? What do you think about the impact it could have?
I actually feel quite confident because at the end of the day, we need to create information to put into the AI. So at the moment, I'm not fearful for my job, and I'm not fearful that I'm going to make my friends unemployed as well, because that's something I don't want to do. But I think, to be quite honest, like I said, I think Insight's been on a journey over the last 7 years. I think 7 years ago, it was a tick box exercise for most businesses. And a lot of businesses got very arrogant and didn't listen to their customers and then got into an awful lot of trouble. So it is incredibly important. And I think more and more every day, especially with the way the world is changing on a daily, monthly basis at the moment with COVID and the impacts that's happened, and Ukraine and all of those sorts of things. So I'm not actually concerned that the insight team is going to be left out. I think it's going to be a lot more work, but I think we're going to make the right impacts and influence the business in the right ways. We've just got to make sure that we are seen to be the people that input the information onto the AI tools, and that we have the right processes in place across the business, that if people are going to use AI, that they're instructed, that they don't go off and build a new proposition or service off the back of one piece of AI that they've got off whatever tool that they've looked at today.
Yeah.
But we're very early in the stages, and it's a lot of experiment and demoing and reporting back and having conversations at the moment. I think it's building trust, I think, is the most important thing. But I don't think that the insight teams are going to be cut out. I think, to be quite honest, from my experience, we're just going to get bigger.
Okay, great stuff. Tom, positive take on the future there. How do you feel about the impact this may have?
I definitely agree with Emma. I think we can all agree that ChatGPT is having a meteoric impact on many industries. And we see also in the insights industry, I'm not only talking about Philips, but in some of our peer companies, competitors as well, we're seeing the consolidation of research and insights functions into smaller teams with a much greater focus on data analytics and data science. And this is a type of evolution that has been ongoing. I think we've seen it for the past decades, that every time there's a new technology coming out, we adapt, we roll with the punches, and we evolve with it. And it's really important that we have the right level of change management implemented to keep up with the pace. So I don't think it's all that new, and I don't think that we won't be able to handle it. I do believe that there will be an increased need for data science roles in marketing and insights teams, greater emphasis on data analytical hard skills, and also data storytelling and stakeholder influencing as soft skills needs to be part of the mix. So I predict that insights teams and data engineers and data architects will probably converge under strategic functions that has an insights objective.
Very interesting. And
you need both, don't you? Sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that if you're going to have any kind of insight team, you need to have data analysts, you need to have researchers hand in hand and working together, because we've all got so much access to data now.
Yeah. Okay.
And you have to have the strategists and the tactical minds to help translate those insights and the data into what's going to be the actions for the decision making.
Yeah. Olaf, I feel it's maybe a moot point to ask the builder of an AI-based solution whether we think AI is going to have a positive impact on the insights function, but you wrap us up with that. What do you think?
Oh, of course, and absolutely it will have. As I said earlier, we should think about it as multiplying the output, not diminishing the input to keep the same output. I think, of course, we're at the beginnings of all of this, and they're still very humble, making sure that the foundational building blocks work right and are robust and trustworthy, but there's going to be a lot built on top of it. But then I also think that, maybe complementing what has been said, there may be development that the insights team will also evolve more and more to become like the guardian of this corporate insights capability. The AI will be maybe doing more and more of operational execution of certain tasks, but it will be critical to steer that the right data is used, that it's used in the right approaches and methods, to have guidance and governance for the whole ecosystem and infrastructure. And I think that will be an extremely important role to make sure technology does what it should do. And AI, as fascinating as outputs are, is still quite limited in its capabilities to do complex tasks on its own. It needs to be micromanaged, and that's where the true experience of the teams is really needed.
Yeah, great. Well, look, we are at the top of the hour. We've actually used up all our time, and I'm sorry for those of you who had questions we couldn't get to. We'll review them. We'll try and find a way of packaging up some of the feedback we couldn't get to answer. This has been a really wonderful discussion. Emma, Tom, Olaf, thank you so much for your time, your expertise. Thanks to everyone in the audience for joining. This is going to be available as a recording immediately afterwards in this link. You can access it here, and it'll be hosted on the Insight Platform site again in about 24 hours. There's one quick thing that I just want to pass you to before we end. In about 3 weeks' time, we're hosting our Demo Days event again, which is accessible here. I don't know whether that's a link you can click on, but if you go to the Insight Platforms website, the reason is we are holding a panel discussion with clients on one of the topics we discussed here, which is how do you assess and measure new vendors in terms of quality of data. We'll also have about 18 different companies showing their products, a good chunk of which will have generative AI capabilities. So make sure you sign up for that, and it's all free to watch. But I just want to say thanks again to Tom and Emma and Olaf. Apologies for wrapping up rather quickly. If you have questions about DeepSight, or you want to chat to any member of the another member of the Market Logic team, after we close this session, you'll see there's a virtual table in the conference room that you'll see there. You can actually join there. Mike from DeepSight is there, ready to have a chat with you if you want to find out more about the product or just want to pick his brains about anything. So you can do that by just clicking to join the table and turn your mic and camera on. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your insights, and enjoy the rest of your days.